Greetings everyone. It is me, Shadow Leon 659 once again. I know I haven't done these in quite a while, but this is now that time I do my bad of, should I say, debates, or should I say media and all that stuff. And today it is the first time I'm ever doing a bad video game sequel debate. And it's a bad video game sequels debate for which of the three is worse between Mega Man X7, Devil May Cry 2, or Resident Evil 6. Now, I'm not ashamed to admit that I actually own copies of both of these games, as you can see right here. See? Not ashamed to admit that I own DMC2 and Resident Evil 6. Don't have a copy of Mega Man X7 for obvious reasons. Now anyway, let us start off with Mega Man X7. Yeah, of course, Mega Man X7 was one of those video games I used to enjoy back in the day. Had a lot of fun playing it when I was a kid. Unfortunately, it's one of those cases of it was a game I enjoyed as a kid, but when I went back to it as an adult, I started noticing all the problems. Yeah, it was sadly the very first Mega Man X game I ever played in my entire life. And replaying the game again was pretty much a chore and all that stuff. With, should I say, the flawed / questionable gameplay design and everything, and the way the 3D stages were handled and all that stuff. Yeah, the controls weren't exactly the best, because whenever the character jumped, kind of felt like they weighed a ton and all that stuff. Zero's Zeta swings were, should I say, slow as sin and everything, and enemies were such bullet sponges to the point that it took way too long for the enemies to die, and don't even get me started on the boss fight. The bosses have way too much health, and the fights tended to be sluggish and all that stuff. But when Mega Man X7, and don't even get me started on the way the camera was, because sometimes the camera would just screw you over, resulting in cheap death after cheap death. And let me not talk about, should I say, the thing that was the abysmal voice acting and all that stuff. It was a game that came in 2003, and the voice acting was that laughably bad. It was 2003. This was 2 years after the first Jak and Daxter game, and this was also the same year you had Ratchet and Clank 2 and Jak 2. Not to mention Sly Cooper and whatnot. So there was no excuse for the bad voice acting and everything. And so yeah, that was my experience with Mega Man X7 and whatnot. And when the game is not being a frustrating mess, Mega Man X7 is kind of a pretty boring game if you ask me. Yeah, and it's a game that is often declared one of the worst games in the Mega Man X series, if not the worst game in the X series, although it's a toss-up between X6 and X7, depending on who you ask and who says who is worse than the other. Now let us get on to Devil May Cry 2. And yeah, Devil May Cry 2 is pretty notorious in the Devil May Cry community for being such a rushed mess of a game and everything. I mean, the behind the scenes writes itself. Just as the original Devil May Cry was wrapping up production, Capcom already greenlit a sequel without Hideki Kamiya and Team Little Devil's input and everything. Let's just say, behind the scenes, certain random stuff happened. The original director to this day remains unknown and everything. Most likely an intern and all that stuff who didn't know what the hell he was doing. And then of course, eventually, that original director was kicked off the project and Hideaki Itsuno was brought in to repair the game within, should I say, 6 months or whatnot. Yeah. And of course, I did notice that the whole game was mostly focusing on gun combat and all that stuff, and saying that you can win the game just via shooting enemies to death and all that stuff. Although I did watch a video that debunked the whole you can't win the game with guns alone and guns aren't extremely overpowered. melee attacks cause more damage to enemies and everything, because I myself have played the game, and yeah, the melee, it's in the execution of the melee for Dante's sword swings. Dante's sword swings kind of feel sluggish and all that stuff, which kind of makes the game kind of feel unfun to play and everything. And the enemies in the game are just mostly cannon fodder mooks that you fight. It basically boils down, go here, fight a squad of cannon fodder mooks, go there, fight another squad of cannon fodder mooks. The levels are way too big and all that. But of course, should I say, there are also many fundamentally flawed aspects, like the way certain boss fights are designed and everything. But unlike X7, at least there are some fun boss fights, like, although I'm not gonna be pronouncing the names properly, but I will admit there was some good boss fights in that entire game, like Purator, the giant minotaur demon you fight. Then you also do, should I say, fight this giant skyscraper demon and everything, which is another good boss fight. Bolverk was kind of the game's Nero Angel, and I kind of wish he was used more in the game, and I wish they didn't rush the game to hell and back. And of course, let us also talk about the fight with Argo Sax the Chaos, or in this case the embodied fight, which is pretty much the highlight of the game. And I will admit that the game does have a kick-ass soundtrack. All the bits and pieces of music are well executed and all that stuff. I seem to have forgot to mention that Mega Man X7 does have a good soundtrack and everything. And it's kind of really funny that, unlike the ninnies on the internet who claim to have played the entire game just by playing Dante's campaign and all that stuff, I actually had the time and patience to play Lucia's campaign right here. As you can see right here in this game, look, this is right here. It comes with 2 discs and everything. And it's of course divided into 2 campaigns. As you can see right here, this is Dante's disc, as you can see. Oh, don't mind the name written. I wrote my name there just to, should I say, show it's my property. I actually had a chance to play Lucia's campaign, as you can see on the disc right here. Is Lucia's campaign perfect by any means? No, it ain't. But heck, I noticed that Lucia had a wide variety of movesets, and she kind of felt like she was easier to play as her than Dante, and she kind of did have her own movesets and everything. I also did forget to mention that this was the first game in the franchise that allowed you to play as Trish and everything. And so, you're not gonna believe this, people. Even though it's the worst Devil May Cry game and all that stuff, it's surprisingly the Devil May Cry game I've played the most, because I wanted to find something good in that game. I did find good aspects, yes, but is Devil May Cry 2 as bad as legends say? You're not gonna believe this, but I'm just gonna say, no, it's nowhere near close to being one of the worst video games of all time. But the game could have been far much better, and after the awesomeness that was the first Devil May Cry game, and that was the sequel that fans got, I can see why so many fans were disappointed. If I was there at the time, I would be extremely disappointed. At the same time, Devil May Cry 2 did inspire the later Devil May Cry games and whatnot, and at least the franchise was in its infancy and trying to find its footing. Now let's move on to Resident Evil 6. Yeah, Resident Evil 6 right here. Resident Evil 6, where do I even start? So, I got a chance to play Resident Evil 6, and when I was playing the game and all that stuff of Leon's campaign, may I remind you that I was playing, should I say, the game on normal difficulty and everything, and oh, you know how the previous few Resident Evil games gave you strategy and all that stuff to, should I say, take out your enemies and everything? Well, Resident Evil 6 just boils down to, oh, I can run up to a zombie and punch or kick them to death and everything, because the enemies are such bullet sponges that eat too much of your own damn ammo. and I was screwed over by the camera and everything because, oh my god, the camera is such a pain in the arse and all that stuff. Because, should I say, there are times in where the camera will move at a different angle and the camera will move into a different angle, and sometimes the enemies you're fighting will attack that blind spot of yours. I had died many times because it was the game throwing me under a bus because of the stupid camera, enemies attacking my blind spot, those goddamn quick time events. Don't even get me started on the overuse of quick time events because wow, it just made the game a freaking chore to play, and I kept dying if I made the wrong move. Like, who the hell designs a game like that? You only save quick time events when it is necessary. It just comes across as, should I say, cheap game design and everything, which would result in cheap death after cheap death after cheap death. That's why you don't design a video game like that. Who on earth designs a video game whereby, oh, it's quick time event this and quick time event that? Like, what on earth are these people thinking? And on top of that, we also had this game have many campaigns and everything. I enjoyed Leon's campaign and all that stuff well in the early stages because the game started, should I say, screwing you over and everything. I have yet to play the other campaigns and whatnot. Simply because Leon's campaign is the best in everything. But of course, the game is currently regarded as the weakest mainline Resident Evil game. And that was my entire experience playing Resident Evil 6. So if you people were to ask at the end of this debate, which of these three would I say is the best, and how would I rank them? Well, this is how the ranking goes. And this is how I place the games. At the bottom is X7. Then you have Resident Evil 6 and Devil May Cry 2. I know you people are saying, how could you enjoy Devil May Cry 2 more than Resident Evil 6? Well, because at least Devil May Cry 2, at least I was able to find some level of enjoyment in that game and whatnot. And at least that game also had Trish to get me through all the bullcrap it had to offer. And it was a plethora of plenty of good ideas, just bad execution. So anyway, that was my video game my bad video game sequel today. What did you guys think of it? Let me know in the comment section down below, and thanks for watching as always. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content. Shadow Leon 659 signing out. Goodbye and take care.